Hello everybody, my name is Jamal Malik, and in this video we're going to be talking about pipeline management. Now, if you haven't already, I'd highly suggest checking out some of our previous videos around building highly effective sales engines, and this is the fourth video as part of that series. Okay, so let's just talk about what pipeline management is. Right? So in a nutshell, pipeline management is effectively using the power of statistics to help you reach your revenue goals. Okay. Now, as we kind of talk about this and build out some of the concepts, I'll touch on a few key areas, but there's also some information that you probably need to kind of do this properly. And I'll cover those pieces as well. Okay. So as you're building a pipeline management or pipeline coverage goals, some of the information you'll need include understanding what your win rates or close rates are. And if you don't know what that is, typically the rule of thumb is 3, 4, even 5x in terms of a multiple. That means that on average, you or your team will win either 1 out of 3, 4, or 5 deals. We'll use, as part of this exercise, 4x or a win rate about 25%, just to kind of do the math and kind of walk through the process. Okay. You also need to understand what your average deal size is, how much time it takes you to close a deal on average, and then also, if you have it, your lead qualification rates to do this properly. Okay. Now again, if you don't have the last piece around lead qualification rates or pipeline coverage goals, we'll use some basic industry standards just to kind of, again, do the math. Okay. All right. So let's talk about some scenarios here, so we can kind of make sense of what pipeline management really means. Okay, so let's say I'm a seller and I have a quota of $1 million for the year, and let's say it's mid-year, and to date I have delivered around $500,000 against my $1 million quota. Okay, so what does that leave me with? Well, I've got a $500,000 gap to my quota. And let's say for the sake of argument, I also have about $1 million in qualified pipeline. These opportunities maybe came in through deals that perhaps we didn't close last quarter, so they slipped into this quarter or this half of the year. But I'll be able to say, I've got some opportunities that I've already begun to work with. All right, so with a win rate of 25%, I need a pipeline coverage goal of $2 million, statistically speaking, for me to achieve my goal. Now, how did I get that number? Okay, so the way I got that number is I looked at my gap to my quota, which is $500K. I multiplied that by my win rates, which again, we say is 25%. So that means I need 4x the pipeline coverage to achieve my goal, because statistically speaking, I'll win 1 at every 4 deals, and that way I'm ensuring that I have a good set of opportunities that I'm working on to help me achieve my goal. Okay, but we're not done there. We're not done there. So with a $1 million pipeline coverage, qualified pipeline already in my pipeline, I can subtract that from my coverage goal, which is $2 million. So that means I only need $1 million of pipeline, additional pipeline, to help me, statistically speaking, reach my goal. So what should I do here, right? So the first thing I need to do is look at, hopefully, my leads and see if there's a way that I could effectively convert some of those leads into opportunities. Okay, so I'm going to kind of pause for a second. I'm going to talk about lead qualification just really quickly here, and also some conversion rates. But this is kind of start talking about some of the mechanics of dealing or managing, pipeline. Now, one of the first and most important things I'll note here is that as you're managing your pipeline, try to be as unemotional and as objective as possible. This happens a lot, both in terms of sellers managing their opportunities, but also managers and leaders managing their business. Okay, the more objective we can be here, the better it's going to help us to achieve our goals. Okay, so let's get back to understanding the difference between a lead and an opportunity. So interestingly, what we find is that for tech companies, the number one reason why either win rates are very low or we see opportunities stall is because some very basic steps or focus areas around your sales process are skipped. And that is explicitly around qualifying deals. And we use BANT, which is by far, I'd say, the industry kind of standard of qualifying deals, which is understanding if your customer has or can gain access to budget, who the buying authority is, and are you engaged with that individual, what the customer's business need or outcomes are in terms of what they're trying to achieve, and then lastly, what are their timelines, okay? So the opportunities that I'm managing in my pipeline that I consider as being qualified pipeline need to pass those 4 metrics. Now, as a seller, as a manager, as a leader, right? If you give yourself some leeway here and don't follow these steps, what you're doing is you're artificially inflating your pipeline. And what that does effectively is it doesn't help you at all, because it is creating a false sense of security. We see this happen quite a bit, both from not only sellers, but from business leaders and managers as well. What typically happens is a manager will go into a discussion with a leader and we'll say, hey, we don't have enough pipeline coverage to achieve our goals. And so what the manager or leader will do is effectively turn to his team and artificially inflate or move leads into opportunities just to get that green from the reporting aspect. Now, again, this can be very tempting. It happens more than you can imagine. However, again, a strong recommendation from us is to be objective and unemotional as possible as it relates to moving or qualifying leads into opportunities. Okay, now a couple of things to kind of note out here, right? So if you're in a position of creating a pipeline coverage goals, what we recommend is by doing it by product or by overall revenue line, and not doing it at the seller level. Now, you may ask, well, why not? The more specific we can be, the better and more likelihood the seller has in achieving their goals. And the reason being is because realistically, it's pretty difficult to create pipeline coverage goals for the seller, especially if you have a large organization. And so it's typically okay to manage it at the product or service line instead. And again, if you kind of bring that up, effectively it should equal out to an ability for the organization to achieve their goals using those standard pipeline coverage goals and metrics. So far we've talked about how you can leverage the power of statistics to ensure that you're in a position to achieve your revenue goals, leveraging pipeline management techniques. The last piece I'll kind of quickly touch on here is that in addition to figuring out the scenario of your gap to coverage, understanding what the makeup of your pipeline is pretty important as well. So for example, you want to make sure that you have a mix of large and small deals in your pipeline. You want to make sure that deal velocity is happening at a pretty good clip, in that you're moving opportunities through the sales process fairly confidently, and again at a metered pace. And then lastly, making sure that as you're managing your pipeline, really what it does is that it equates or translates the amount of time or where the time is spent on from a seller's perspective and point of view. What we mean by that is typically in the beginning of the year, when it comes to pipeline management, you're probably going to be doing a lot of prospecting, a lot of lead qualification to build up that pipeline. And then later on in the year, you're typically going to be focusing more on just closing that pipeline. So this has been a really quick video around pipeline management and coverage goals. We hope you find it useful, and happy hunting. Take care.